Oops. Okay, can you see the?
Yes, we can.
Perfect.
Are we good to go, Marianne?
Yeah, we're live streaming and it's now, you can see the screen, so you're good to go.
Okay, thank you. Well, welcome everyone to the Full Authority meeting on June 15th, 2022. It's a lovely warm day here down at Kettle Creek, and we're ready to get on with our meeting. The first thing I'd like to draw your attention to is the audio meeting recording notice. I know that you've read that many times by now, so it's becoming second nature. At this point in time, I'd like to ask Elizabeth to do a roll call.
Dennis Krebitz.
Here.
Jaguar.
Present.
Harvey.
Here.
Jim Herbert sent regrets. Grant Jones.
Here.
Bill Mackey.
Here.
Steve Peters.
Here.
Elizabeth Pelosa sent regrets. Allison Warwick.
Here.
Ralph Winfield.
Here.
We have 8 of 10 members present.
Great, thank you. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Hearing or seeing none, we're moving on now to the minutes of the meeting, May 18th, 2022. I'm sure everyone's had a chance to have a look at them, so I'm looking for a mover to accept those meetings as those minutes as presented. So Kravitz moves, second Jones, all in favor?
Krebitz.
Yes.
Jaguar.
Yes.
Harvey.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Winfield.
Yes.
Warwick.
Yes.
And those minutes pass.
So moved. So moving now to the minutes of May 31st, the executive committee meeting be approved. Is anybody need more time to look at that, or are we ready to make a motion?
Peters.
Thank you. Seconder?
Mackey.
Second, thank you. All in favor?
Krebitz.
Yes.
Jaguar.
Yes.
Harvey.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Winfield.
Yes.
Warwick.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. So now moving on to matters arising. And the first thing that we have is the media report. And Marianne, the floor is yours.
Perfect. So a very busy month and fairly active on our social platforms. Last week we posted about our ongoing job hiring campaign. This post in particular had some really great results. So 55 people had been reached organically, so we didn't put any money into the post, and over 55 shares, so reached a lot of people. And then I really wanted to highlight some of the tree planting and stewardship projects that we've done. And below it, you can just see some really great feedback from the community. So sharing these good news stories and events that really engage people. So.
Good, and it is nice. The positive stuff always seems to be the stuff that gets shared. So it's nice that we're able to focus on that. Good job, Marianne. And now project tracking.
So as Marianne mentioned, lots of great things happening over the past month. A lot of seasonal staff interviews that were conducted. MTE consultants are out at Deer Ridge, the new sea conservation area, doing life science inventories, 1.5 acre tall grass prairie planted, municipality of Central Elgin. Our tree planting sites were all wrapped up by May 31st, and surprisingly a good season there. The Canada Day long weekend at both campgrounds is at capacity, and Jen has been working with the campground staff in identifying snapping turtle nests that are inappropriately placed in the campground, but also we've entertained calls from the public as well. that have identified some nests, and overall we've been able to save 136 eggs that are then transported to Upper Thames River for incubation, and then will be returned back to Kettle Creek to release in our area.
Great, it's good news. Any questions regarding this? No, nothing.
Peters,
Yeah, go ahead,
Peters.
Steve.
Is there an inordinate number of snapping turtles out nesting this year? I have seen more posts of people's gardens being invaded by snapping turtles and people rescuing snapping turtles crossing roads, or maybe it's just the power of social media. I don't know. But is there a cyclical nature to snapping turtles laying eggs?
Chair, I'll turn that over to Jen to answer.
Thank you, to Steve through the chair. I think probably it is a factor of social media being more prevalent nowadays, but the turtles at this time of year are just more visible because you're often seeing them in places where you might not expect to see them. You're seeing them along the roadways and in your backyard, and they're very easy to photograph when they're not moving around too much. It could very well also be a cyclical thing where it's been a big year for turtles laying. It's hard to say.
Definitely think probably rescuing all these inappropriate turtles that normally wouldn't survive is adding to the population as well.
Yeah, I was told that any egg that can be saved is a valuable thing. So we're doing our part to help all of these species at risk that are in our watershed.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, then we're going to move on to watershed conditions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kind of a quiet month, not a lot going on. We had a watershed condition statement flood outlook just due to a significant rain event that moved through the area. We're also working with the City of St. Thomas to undergo the lake monitoring at Lake Margaret. That's something that we do every couple of years, and it's an interesting project to be involved in.
Any questions for Jen? No, then I'm going to ask for that the matters arising A through D be received. Looking for a mover.
Harvey.
Thank you. Seconder.
Jones.
Jones. Thank you. All in favor? Elizabeth, whenever you're ready.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Warwick.
Yes. So moved. And then moving on to correspondence, we have an invitation.
Sorry, Chair, we just missed item D. We kept it separately. It's a
Oh, sorry,
campgrounds
okay.
update. So if we want to move to that one.
Oh, yes, okay, yeah. Let's move on to campground operations update. So how did I miss that?
Thank you, Chair Rourke. I can present this. So in the advanced package, we kind of put out a detailed summary of some of the challenges that we faced with our campground operations this year. Just, starting out with some poor weather conditions, delayed improvements that we made to the bathroom floors. So there were some minor interruptions at the beginning of the year, but now we're happy to report that's all complete. We're on to full operations now with those buildings. I think the biggest thing we wanted to highlight in our discussion today is the substantial decrease in seasonal staff applications that we received. And I think that's probably not a surprise for most of you. It's common around the region. There's a lot of summer jobs available that we're competing for candidates to apply for. To put it into perspective, typically in prior years, we've been successful in retaining postgraduate students, so university, college, people looking for full-time positions or full-time hours. So we typically hire about 20 to 22 staff on a full-time hour schedule. This year, after going through 4 or 5 different job ad recruiting and interviews, we've actually been successful in hiring 33 staff to fill those positions. The biggest challenges now is what we're seeing is a lot of restrictions to their schedule. So we've been required to be more flexible in hiring full-time hours, part-time hours, flexible hours, as well as some casual on call. So we just finished another round of interviews on Monday, that if all of those offers are secured, then we do believe now we have enough staff to fulfill our normal schedule for the operating season. Other than the one issue of we weren't successful in retaining any certified lifeguards. And again, that appears to be a common problem with shortages for having licensed lifeguards that need to recertify every 2 years. So whether that's a result from the pandemic or what the situation is right now, it just appears that certified lifeguards are in high demand and difficult to retain. So if I get the next slide, please. So a couple of things to keep in mind. In 2020, we did not open our pools as a result of the pandemic. And in 2021, we did open the pools, but we didn't have lifeguards as well. So one opportunity we have under the public pools regulation is that campground pools are considered Class B facilities, which is similar to a hotel. So as a Class B facility, we do have exemptions for supervision. So lifeguards aren't necessarily required for Class B pools. So last year, we operated both facilities as a Class B. We didn't have them guarded, but because of the restrictions in the regulation, that only allows for 10 bathers to be in the pool at any time without a lifeguard. So last year, we did reservations because of contract tracing. I think although some of our visitors weren't necessarily happy with those restrictions, it was a little more receptive because of the COVID-19 restrictions that we've been living with for the last 2 years. Now, as things are starting to open up and less COVID-19 restrictions, our issue this year is actually retaining lifeguards. So we didn't have any apply, we weren't able to retain any. So we have no other choice than to have our pools open as unguarded Class B pools. So one thing I wanted to highlight on is within the regulation, there's several factors that determine how many bathers can be in the pool. So there's a formula based on the water surface area, the depth of the pool, that we can determine the maximum number of bathers. And then it's also controlled by whether you have 1 lifeguard or 2 lifeguards on duty. And then again, for a Class B, there is exemptions to the lifeguards, but if our pool facility is greater than 93 square meters water surface area, it restricts us to only 10 bathers at a time. And then that's the reason why last year we only operated with 2. On your left, you can see the Lake Whitaker pool. It just contains 1 large swimming pool facility that's 144 square meters. So it is larger than the 93 criteria. Therefore, without lifeguards, we can only entertain 10 bathers at a time. With Dalewood, and I apologize, a little difficult in the picture, we actually have 2 pool facilities. We have a main pool and we have a wading pool. So through discussions with the local health unit, there is an opportunity that if we were to close off the wading pool, render it inaccessible to the public, then we can apply the regulatory requirements for the main pool only, which wouldn't restrict us to 10 bathers. So if I can have the next slide, please. So if we look at fencing off the wading pool, the main swimming pool is only 89 square meters. So then we can go back to the maximum bather account for the main pool without having lifeguards on duty. A lot of the questions I get through this process is how come hotels don't have to have a lifeguard and there's no limits? And primarily it's because the size of the pool is under that 93 square meter requirement. So in this case, what we are proposing to move forward with to address the lifeguard shortage, and if I could have the next slide, please, is that for Dalewood, we would operate it as a Class B unguarded facility. We still intend to have it staffed. So we would have a pool attendant at the pool for the entire operating hours. They would not be lifeguards. Their role would be to maintain the pool, enforce the rules, the bather load numbers. They also have requirements for maintenance and water quality testing that has to be done every two hours. So we would have someone there fully as it's operated. They just wouldn't be responsible for life-saving measures that a lifeguard has been trained for. We propose to close the wading pool, render it inaccessible to the public. Therefore, we wouldn't be restricted to 10. We are recommending that the bather load be maintained at 30 for the main pool. So that's consistent with if we had 1 lifeguard and it's below the maximum capacity the regulation would allow us for. That would also put us into a situation that we'd be operating the Dalewood pool at the same level of bathers as pre-pandemic conditions, because we usually only had 1 lifeguard. We've always had a process in place that we would run a 20 to 30 minute swim time interval when it gets to capacity, again, to try and encourage that turnover and give everybody a fair opportunity at the pool. As part of the Class B exemption for lifeguards, we do have to post that bathers under the age of 12 years of age must be accompanied by an adult. That way the adult is responsible for that youth. And then for Lake Whitaker, unfortunately, because of the size of the pool, the bather load can only be 10. So in that case, we are planning on running a 20 to 30 minute swim interval. So basically that's closing the pool every half hour, pushing bathers out to allow for new bathers to come in so that we can allow for more turnover and opportunity for the entire campground. We don't intend to do reservations unless it becomes an issue and we need to ensure fair access. Again, bathers under 12 years of age must be accompanied by an adult. We hope to have some additional staff and we would increase the operating hours at Whitaker from prior years just to try and create more opportunity because of that bather load restriction. The other benefit that Lake Whitaker has is we have the lake. We do water sampling of the lake to allow for public swimming. So we do have 2 beaches at the lake. So we are really going to try and encourage and promote the users to use the lake more when the pool's at capacity. And we've got plans this year to replenish the sand and try and create more opportunities at the lake that we haven't done in prior years. So due to the lifeguard shortage, that's the proposal that we are presenting to the board to address the lifeguard shortage. We're just looking for the members to receive the report and approve the pool operation for 2022. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Joe?
Yes, it's Steve. So Joe, have we ever considered raising the wages for lifeguards?
Yeah, so I neglected to note, because of the lack of interest we had in the beginning, we did raise it to $16 an hour, but we're still unsuccessful in drawing any attention. When we look at some of our neighboring municipalities, they are upwards of $20 that they're paying their lifeguards. And I was aware of an article in the London Free Press recently that the City of London hires about 100, I believe it was 120 lifeguards, and they're about 30% short of reaching that goal. So there is a very competitive process for certified lifeguards that are out there.
Now, do we have a maximum budget for lifeguards?
No, it's incorporated into the overall seasonal staff salary budget.
Okay, so could we run the pools as A pools at certain times and B pools at certain times?
Yeah, that was part of the plan that we presented to the board in November last year. That was our intentions for this year. It's simply just changing signage. And when we have a lifeguard on duty, then we can increase the numbers based on the lifeguard requirements and then changing the signs to Class B with notifications to the health unit. So that was our intention for this year. But because of the lack of lifeguards we were able to retain is why we're just proposing to run solely Class B.
So what would happen then if we took if we were expecting to hire, let's say, 6 lifeguards and we weren't able to find any, if we were to take that lifeguard wage and increase it by half, so instead of being 16, it becomes 28 or 26 or whatever, to encourage to hire at least, let's say, 3 lifeguards that we could then use during the busy times during the day.
I think maybe I'll just do a quick answer, Steve, then maybe refer to Elizabeth for the budget. I think our intention, I should clarify, is we do still intend to keep our job ads posted. And if lifeguards come available, we'll go back to the plan. What we're proposing here is in the event of no lifeguards. In terms of the budget scenario, I'll maybe refer to Elizabeth to respond.
Steve, I get what you're saying in terms of rejigging the budget. It's something that we can look at, but part of the pay equity review, we're asking the consultant to look at that lifeguard position as well to get a proper wage moving forward. I think this year what we're finding, even if we were able to go up to $20 an hour, we're just not finding that we wouldn't be able to find the lifeguards right now. We're up against stiff competition. There's ads out there right now where I think it's a pool in London looking for lifeguards that are offering $20 or $21 an hour. Will pay for your mileage to get there and your recertification. So it's that competitive right now to look for lifeguards, that I don't think just simply increasing the wage is going to get us the lifeguards we need even to open on the weekends.
Okay, it's just such a shame, right? Because, you know, as a camper, you go and all of a sudden you go, well, you can only be there for 20 minutes and only 10 people can be in. Then that, instead of being a positive, it becomes a negative.
I think at Dalewood, though, we would be able to allow 30 in, which is is basically the same as if the lifeguard is on duty. The only thing is we would be, you know, possibly looking at increasing their rotation. And again, we normally run into that on a busy, long weekend. We would get into rotations even with lifeguards on duties, simply because the pool is the only option at Dalewood. At Lake Whitaker, we're a little bit more fortunate. You know, we operated with 10 bathers in the pool last year, so it's not going to be quite as big of a shock to those campers. And as Joe mentioned, the lake is still available. And definitely moving forward for next year, and with the outside consultant, we definitely need to look at what we're paying lifeguards to make sure it's fair, but fair for the position, but also fair as a comparable to the other seasonal positions that we have as well.
And I guess the other thing is seeing that wading pool just sitting there. And frequently those are the people who use the pool the most. And it's just a shame to see it sitting there in perfectly good condition. So there doesn't seem to be any reason not to have it open.
Yeah,
If I may through you, Madam Chair, I think the other aspect too is, you know, we go through health unit inspections for these, so we are going to be exploring with the health unit whether there's modifications we can do to the pool to allow both facilities to open, whether it's a permanent fencing with separate entrance. Those are still things we want to explore, but haven't had answers to yet. But what we presented today was something that we felt we could at least keep the pools open, because if we close our pools, we do get strong objection from our clientele through that process when they are closed, because of how important they are to the campers. So
I think
the proposal we have today is just so that we can keep it open, but we do intend as staff to continue to search for lifeguards and continue to search for other avenues that may be able to allow the pools to open up to more bathers.
You know, congratulations on putting a plan together, because I know it's got to be very, very challenging, but it's just a shame to see that facility is such a nice facility, and to see, you know, things not being utilized to the maximum. It's a shame.
It is, and I think one benefit we do have is that we fall under Class B. You know, for our municipalities and our public pools, they don't have that option. And if they're short on lifeguards, it's most likely going to result in closures or reduced hours.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Bill here.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a question through you, Madam Chair. Does anybody talk to the folks at Port Stanley? Do you know if they're having a hard time getting lifeguards? I know it's a different situation with the open water lifeguard versus the swimming pool lifeguard, but I didn't know whether, you know, I've heard that they seem to get a lot of applications every year and they don't necessarily take everybody. I was just wondering if there might be people there that didn't get a job that might be interested in, you know, in a pool job as opposed to, you know, the beach lifeguard kind of thing. So
Defer that to Dennis.
We currently have a full complement of our lifeguards, and we provide the training for them. I could inquire if there'd be any sharing possibilities at this point, but I'll have to get back to you, but I will look into that.
If I may as well, Madam Chair, no detailed discussions, but I have had side discussions with staff at the member municipalities, just inquiring if they're seeing a similar issue with lifeguards and letting them know our shortage. So certainly they have indicated that if they have anybody that didn't get offered a position, they would refer us or refer them to us. Just hasn't come to fruition. I know with Central Elgin, it's a different type on the open beach. There's different certifications that are required and higher salaries. It always tends to attract a lot of lifeguards in our region because of that. They like the atmosphere and the experience they're getting on the beach over what they might get at the campground. So we have put those feelers out to staff and they are aware of it, but it hasn't realized any lifeguards for us.
yeah, just one more quick question, and it's more to Joe. That picture you had up there, Joe, was that this year or last year with the fencing off the two pools?
That's this year. We have the temporary fencing installed in place that can be removed or added subject to the board's decision today.
I couldn't.
We intend to open our pools next Friday, so we just did some pre-preparation.
I couldn't tell from the picture. So is the wading pool, did it have water in or was it drained?
Maybe if we could just go back one slide. There is water in the wading pool. Because of the plaster finish that we have on that concrete pool, we require water to be in it and in the pool to be operating at full capacity with the minimum water quality requirements. So we did inquire with our pool supplier as to options, and he said that this is the best method to close it off with temporary fencing, but to leave it operating so that we don't get into any structural issues.
Yeah, I thought it was an operational thing. It just optically, when the kids see that pool and they can't get in it and it looks really good, they just probably wouldn't understand why they couldn't use it. That's all. But I understand you can't leave it drained. You got to keep the water in it operationally. So that's it.
And that's a good point, Bill. We also, I believe Rob intends to put the winter cover on it.
Yeah.
When we get to operation, when we get to physically opening it. So.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? No? Do we have a separate motion for that?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
If we could go one more slide, thank you.
all right. So we have a recommendation that the board receive the staff report on campground operations update and approve the proposed Class B swimming pool operations as presented for the 2022 camping season. So, mover?
Mackie?
Okay, seconder?
Harvey,
Thank you. Elizabeth, do you want to call the vote?
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jagger,
yes,
Harvey,
yes,
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Warwick.
Yes.
That motion passes.
So do we still need to do the A through C, right? We did
No, you did that.
Okay, yeah, all right. So moving on now to correspondence. We have some correspondence. Elizabeth?
Yeah, this is just an invitation to a joint webinar being hosted by Conservation Ontario and AMO on the phase 2 of the transition period for CAs. If any board members are interested, you can let me know and I can register you. It is occurring June 22nd from 1:30 to 2:30 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, excuse me,
Yes.
I have to leave the meeting now, so
Okay,
thanks very much. We'll talk to you guys later. Thank you.
thank you. So noted that he's leaving the meeting at 10:28. And then we have a recommendation that the correspondence be received as presented. Before mover, Kravitz?
Jones.
Jones second. Do you want to call the vote? Elizabeth?
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jagger,
yes,
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield.
Yes.
That motion passes.
And statement of revenue expenses not on, and then moving on to new business. We have the first one, which is a GIS server, web GIS viewer, support and maintenance, and this reports Elizabeth, Jessica, and Joe.
I can take it, Chair. The 2022 budget earmarked $5,000 annually for the GIS server maintenance, as well as the development of a web GIS viewer. The main impetus for this was basically that we had an existing GIS server that was established by our GIS IT supervisor before they left in 2019. And we do need to maintain that. It was set up on open source software, so it's a fairly specified task or software that it was set up on. We also wanted to move ahead with making more of our data layers publicly available. This is seen as a best management practice right now, to open it up for a web GIS viewer for the public. So we did go out to request quotes. We did some investigation and found 2 local companies that are able to provide these services. We provided them with a very specified quote, so we knew that we were comparing apples to apples. We had both respond, Luna Geospatial and PSD. The implementation costs were the main difference between the 2 bids. Luna included it in their annual cost, whereas PSD, there was an extra $8,000 cost. The other benefit of going with Luna Geospatial is that their web GIS viewer is actually up and running as a platform that we could view and experience and know that it's working, whereas PSD's is still in development. So they could only talk about it, they couldn't showcase it. So with the annual cost being quite similar, the recommendation for staff is to go with Luno Geospatial at a rate of $8,470 per year to provide that comprehensive GIS server maintenance and support, and to develop that web GIS server. It is over budget, but again, I'm confident that I can find that loss in other areas within that department to make up the difference.
Okay, any questions for Elizabeth? No, hearing and seeing none, we have a recommendation in front of us. Steve, you're moving? He's disappeared.
Yes, Peter?
Okay, great, thank you. And Bill, were you seconding?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And all in favor? Actually, Elizabeth's gonna call the vote.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
yes,
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes,
Winfield,
yes,
Warwick,
Yes,
and that motion passes.
great. Moving now on to the Conservation Authority Act and Progress Report. Elizabeth, is this your report?
Yes. So we are required to submit a progress report to the ministry by July 1st. We wanted to bring it to the board just to update you on progress that we've seen in terms of meeting the regulatory requirements. Based on the regulation, the progress reports needs to contain any and all feedback that we've got from our member municipalities on the inventory programs and services, and update on any negotiations we have had for the cost apportioning agreements, and outline any difficulties that we're having in terms of implementing this. You can see from the progress report that we have the transition plan approved in December. Our inventory was looked at, approved, and submitted by the board to meet that February 2022 guideline. We've circulated that inventory to all our member municipalities, and Betsy and I met with staff from each member municipality earlier this year. All the member municipalities have, at least at the staff level, have given us some initial feedback on the inventory. Lots of positive feedback from that circulation. Other related activities you'll see coming up on the agenda, we're looking at passing a fee policy and their fee schedules, which is another requirement. And we're making progress on the cost apportioning agreements, mainly by doing some research into how those agreements will look before we start rolling them out to and seeking feedback on those apportioning agreements from the member municipalities. So all of that is included in the progress report. If I can have the next slide, what we're looking for the board today is to basically approve the progress report for submission to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks by the July 1st deadline.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions regarding this? Well, thank you, Elizabeth, for getting this on track, and it's good to have this submitted. I know the ministry's approved a lot of the different things we've done already, so I think you're keeping us on the right track. So looking for a mover? Kravitz, seconder?
Winfield,
Thank you, Ralph. And Elizabeth, you can call the vote.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
yes,
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
yes,
Winfield,
yes,
Warwick.
Yes. Okay, so moved, and now fee policy.
Chair, the fee policy was presented for an in-depth review of the executive committee on May 31st. And the committee recommended that we present it to you today for final approval. Again, it's a requirement that came out of the second phase of regulation, specifically the minister's fee class policy, that we have a comprehensive fee policy in place. It clearly outlines all of the different fees that the authority charges. We've always had certain fee schedules, certainly for Joe's section 28 program, as well as the conservation area fees. have existed as individual fee schedules, but the goal here is to have them combined into one document that clearly outlines the fees that we are collecting and ways in which they can request an administrative review of those fees, as well as clearly outlining to the public when they come to the board for review and approval. So in general, the policy is developed on the following principles: the administration of charging fees in a transparent and accountable manner, inclusion of the fee schedules that clearly list the programs and services for which a fee may apply, public notification of the frequency of the policy review and procedure for consideration of fees, and noting that in general, the fees that we are charging are based on a user pay principle. We're aiming that the updated fee schedules that we would update those fee schedules for the 2023 operating year. And those schedules that you'd be approving today would be considered again at future full authority meetings in keeping with the proposed policy. I'll also note that the fee policy was based on Conservation Ontario templates that were previously released. And just last week, Conservation Ontario released basically a checklist against the new regulation for the fee policies, and Betsy and I have reviewed that checklist against the draft that we're proposing today, and it met all of those obligations as well. So I'm still confident that the right move is that the board approve the fee policy and fee schedules as presented.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. Board, any questions for Elizabeth regarding this fee policy and fee schedule? Hearing or seeing none, then let's got a recommendation on the floor. So we're looking for a mover.
Jones.
Okay, Jones, seconded by
Mackey,
Aki. Okay, and Elizabeth, if you'll call the vote, that'd be great.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Winfield,
yes,
Warwick,
Yes,
and that motion passes.
great. Now moving on to Port Stanley floodproofing and elevations development guide. Joe.
Thank you, Chair Warwick. So this is a study that Kettle Creek commissioned following some recommendations of the Port Stanley Coastal Risk Assessment in Port Stanley that was completed by Central Oregon last year. Ultimately, moving forward, this study was done to evaluate the floodproofing elevations that we have for development in Port Stanley, recognizing that the prior studies were done in the early 90s prior to the development of the provincial technical guides that were done in the early 2000s. So there's several years of data that needed to be updated to ensure that we're floodproofing to the appropriate standard, and develop a guide that can assist staff when dealing with technical development regulations within the Lake Erie flood uprush. The one thing I want to highlight is that this document is not changing policy. Policy that's embedded within the municipal bylaws and zoning designations already has established the principle of use. So development in Port Stanley and the Lake Erie flood uprush is a permissive activity. And this study was to define the technical aspects of how we can mitigate those hazards when development is permitted in the Lake Erie flood uprush. So if I could have the next slide, please. So this here is showing the study area of the West Main Beach from the pier. And a diagram that shows when we're looking at floodproofing elevations for flood uprush on a coastal process, we're not floodproofing to the static level of the flood after the event or during the event. It's trying to predict the wave energy and the wave height that's coming in from those waves from the lake in determining the floodproofing elevations. When we talk about floodproofing, the ideal concept is dry passive, which means you want all of the habitable space or the finished floor of these buildings raised above the flood elevation so that that wave energy can pass through underneath the habitable structure and provide assurances that property and life are protected in the event of a flood. In some instances over time, our preference is always development on piers, but we have over time started looking at alternative foundation types like perimeter foundations, because users have wanted garage structures on the north side that you just can't raise it. So There are considerations for alternative foundation types that have been granted through site-specific reviews. One thing to note in the bottom diagram there is that with a perimeter foundation, what this study has concluded is that if the flood proofing is higher than 0.8 meters, there's a bit of wave energy that's going to push that wave up higher or up the side of the foundation. So when we get into 0.8 meters or high of flood proofing, it does require an additional allowance to raise that finished floor up above that surge, or we would be encouraging those landowners to look at doing piers to avoid that additional lake surge. But if I could have the next slide, please. So the results of this study designated the 4 zones across the study area from east to west, and they do have differing elevations that have been determined. Basically because the more horizontal distance you have for that wave energy to dissipate, it lowers the wave height. So as we go from east, when we go from west to east, we actually see a lesser elevation. Not to complicate things too much, but there was different datums used for prior studies to current studies. So to review apples to apples, our consultant provided us a conversion formula so that we can adjust the elevations as necessary based on the geodetic datum. But ultimately, what's resulting is a slight increase of 50 centimeters from the west down to an increase of, I think, 13 centimeters to the east as a result of updating that information since the 90s studies, and as well as we're following the provincial technical guide on how we determine that. Next slide, please. Earlier this year, municipality staff, when we were reviewing drafts of this document, added some additional work to this study. Primarily, Central Elgin is looking at retaining some federal funding to put in some flood mitigation strategies. So one thing that the municipality is already looking at is extending the West Pier to try and mitigate some of that lake surge that's coming up through the center channel of Kettle Creek into the harbor, as well as expanding a dune across the main public beach to help mitigate some of that wave energy that's coming in from the flood uprush. So what this study did is they looked at if the municipality implemented those 2 measures, would it have an effect on the flood proofing elevation, which it does, and it does propose a lesser elevation for zones C and D in the harbor in the main section of the beach there. That of course is contingent upon those structures being in place. We do caution relying on reduced flood elevations for capital structures because of the guarantee of long-term maintenance. But in this situation, it'd be the municipality as the owner, and the long-term maintenance would be required and secured through, I assume, council motion to ensure that it does provide flood mitigation in the long term. So as part of this process, we did include in the package that Central Elgin staff have reviewed this current draft and are supportive of its conclusions and adoption. So if I can just have the next slide, please. The last component of the report was to develop a set of development guides. So to assist staff in determining what are the design requirements for minor structures, redevelopment, or different things like that. This guideline, again, has been developed consistent with the provincial technical guide for existing development within a hazard, and it's comparable to neighboring CAs that offer a similar approach. So we've got a development guideline now that can provide us more specifics of things we need to consider when development happens in the flood uprush. What I did identify in the report are a summary of the changes. So what's really changing as a result of this report from current practice to where we go if it was approved. So one, obviously, is we have increased flood elevations and new development zones defined by the differing elevations. I think one of the biggest things here that we've heard from the public is right now, any development that's exposed to the lake requires a site-specific review by a coastal engineer. And because of the issues that we're having on the Great Lakes with rising lake levels and lack of ice cover, as well as the demand of coastal engineers in the province, it's being more and more difficult to find those experts. We are getting expressed concerns from the citizens that it's taking an additional 6 months to a year and upwards of $8,000 to $10,000 for those reviews. And to be quite honest, in my time with the authority, we haven't had any of significant changes. They're simply reassuring that they've met the current policies and providing a stamp to it. So through consultation with the True Engineering, we were comfortable that we've established a set of guidelines that as long as they're being met, we would be able to avoid the necessity of having site-specific review. So this is a benefit to the community in terms of streamlining application processes. It is recognized that if they're veering from what the guidelines say, then there still may be an opportunity then to have the professional site review. And then the only other changes are, again, more opportunity for foundation types. So originally, we looked at everything on piers. Over the years, with the changes in beach accretion and more beach and lesser heights of floodproofing, through those site-specific reviews, we have permitted alternative floodproofing types. So not everything requires piers. And this document gives us the more guidance that a structural engineer can rely on to develop those requirements. So in the end, on the next slide, we are looking for approval of this report so that staff can start implementing it into our Section 28 regulations process and for guidance in the municipalities as they move forward.
Okay, thank you, Joe, and that was a long report that took a long time to get to, but I think that it's good to finally see it. And I know that I have some questions already here, so I'm going to start with Dennis. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. After reading that report, I feel like a coastal engineer. So I didn't muscle my way through it, but the charts of the guides at the back of the last 3-page report are going to be very beneficial. And we do encourage pre-install for any development that takes place. So this is an excellent guideline for that is coming in September. It's going to be.
We're looking for this one to be approved and implemented now. So in the report, what I talk about is this engineer was tasked with two jobs: to complete the development guide that's before you today. They're also updating our Lake Erie flood lookup tables that assist staff in flood forecasting. So that one's going to be completed over the summer, and that portion will be presented to the board in September. So we are looking for this one to be approved and implemented now, once it's approved.
Okay. Any other questions? No, okay. Any other comment, Jones? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Joe. With regards to the proposed breakwater extension, how does that affect ice breakup in the spring? Is that going to be a problem?
So through discussions with Central Oregon staff, we've identified that. We want to make sure that the engineering consultant working on the breakwater assesses that, because right now there is kind of a, for lack of a better word, a suction that occurs. So when the harbor's frozen over and we get an ice jam upstream of the lift bridge, we do see that ice is being sucked under the harbor and outlet into the lake. So some preliminary evaluations, the municipality has had Brian Riggs with Riggs Engineering, who's a longtime engineer and very knowledgeable of the harbor. He's done some preliminary work to suggest that it can be designed to mitigate that issue so it doesn't block ice jams. But that's obviously something that would have to be explored further through the design of the breakwater when we get the funding to go to the next step.
Yeah, we don't want to knock out the bridge we have so far.
All right. If anybody couldn't hear that, Grant's worried about Southwold, so protecting his turf. Did anybody have any questions? I'm sorry, I can't see you at the moment, but
Peters?
Yep, go ahead, Steve.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So, Joe, a scenario, let's say Erie Rest, and a cottage, somebody takes down a cottage and wants to rebuild and put a new one up. Do they have to meet, would they have to meet the new guidelines that are here? Or could they, let's say, just tear their cottage down and rebuild on their existing foundation that wouldn't meet the guidelines?
Thank you, Steve. That's kind of a loaded question. It really depends on the application. So we have had, like right now, if somebody wanted to tear down their cottage and build new, they would have to meet floodproofing requirements through an application process. We have had situations where it's more of a reconstruction, where the existing foundation is stable and certified by an engineer that it's stable for the purposes of reconstructing on it. So we will work with them under that scenario. They would still have to get an engineer to look at some ways of mitigating flood damage. So they may have to raise their electrical components and their heating components and things like that, but they may not necessarily have to get to raising the finished floor to the new standard because they're building on the existing foundation. So there are redevelopment policies versus new development policies that we can work with them, but ultimately both require an engineer to incorporate some type of mitigation from flooding.
Okay, any follow-up, Steve?
Question,
Okay.
question,
Yes,
please.
Ralph, go ahead.
Yes. Have you considered the construction of a break wall out beyond the shoreline? I know there are some in place in various other places in the world, and they seem to work very well. Has this been given serious consideration?
That'd be a federal.
Yeah, no, thank you, Ralph. So the Port Stanley Coastal Risk Assessment that was done in 2021 looked at the concept of establishing a berm at a specific elevation across the entire beachfront, which
Yeah.
would alleviate the risk of flooding. And this report looked at that as well. The concern there is that it would have to be a comprehensive relationship between public and private, because if one landowner didn't buy in and created a break in the berm, it wouldn't be beneficial to have the whole thing. So through this process, we do recommend dune development by all landowners because it helps mitigate and dissipate that wave energy. But if one landowner doesn't meet that dune protection, then it's not going to mitigate or alleviate the flooding risk. So in the studies that were done here, the elevations were determined on worst case scenario being no dune development. But there are opportunities to reduce that flooding and alleviate it if there was some type of cooperative approach across the entire reach and have a dune in place.
Yes.
Okay, Travis, go ahead, sorry, Dennis.
Just further to the dune development, Central Oregon has started to construct part of a dune by the Matthews at that end. And we are encouraging it for landowners, but it's not very much, it's not being accepted by landowners.
All right, any other questions? Hearing or seeing none, we do have a recommendation in front of us that the Port Stanley floodproofing elevations and development guide be approved as presented. And do we have a mover? Kravitz, okay, seconder?
Jones.
Jones, okay. Elizabeth, when you're ready, call the vote, please.
Credits,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Winfield,
No.
Warwick.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Now moving on to June planning and regulations activity report.
Thank you, Chair Warwick. Again, it's just an advanced report on the summary activity of permits issued and planning approvals by staff. And we're just looking for receipt of that information, and I can answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions for Joe? Here you're seeing none, then I have a recommendation that the June planning and regulations activity report be received. Looking for a mover?
Mackey.
Mackey, thank you. Seconder?
Jones.
Jones, thank you. Elizabeth, call the vote when you're ready, please.
Credits,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Warwick.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Great. So we do have a closed session in front of us, but I would like a motion to go in your closed session for the reasons of discussing property matter and legal matter. So
Peters.
Thank you. Seconder,
Winfield.
thank you, Ralph. And call the vote when you're ready, Elizabeth.
Chair, I'll just mention to members, I mentioned to Chair at the top that we just have one other closed session agenda item that I'd like to add. It's
Okay.
Security of property.
Okay. All right.
With that, I'll call Kravitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
and Warwick.
Yes. Okay, and now Mary Ann, just let us know when we're no longer live.